The Chicago White Sox hung on to beat the Minnesota Twins on Monday afternoon. Dylan Cease had to work around 3 errors behind him, but he went 5 innings, only issued 1 earned run. Offensively, the Sox had one big inning, and that was able to hold up thanks to an outstanding performance by the bullpen. Unfortunately, there are more injuries to address as the White Sox look to make it 2 in a row in Minnesota with Lance Lynn on the mound.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Sox fans, welcome to Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen each and every day. We're free and available on all platforms. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On Sox. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search Locked On White Sox. Today's episode is brought to you by HelloFresh. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. Go to HelloFresh.com/MLB60 and use code MLB60 for 60% off, plus free shipping. Hey, I'm your host, Nick Borowski, a lifelong diehard Chicago White Sox fan, recording this podcast just blocks from the ballpark in beautiful Bridgeport. You can find me on Twitter at Nick_GGTB. Locked On White Sox is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hey, our Chicago White Sox are now 5-6, still trailing the Minnesota Twins. We got 2 more games with them. Got off on the right foot on Monday afternoon. Beat the Twins in game number 11 on the year, 4-3. We're waiting for the Sox to win a series, win back-to-back games, waiting for the Sox to really put it all together for a stretch. You know, go on a run where the pitching is going along with the hitting. Everything is synced up. An early series against a division foe and one that is in first place here, Minnesota Twins, of course. It's a good test for our White Sox and should be met with some urgency. A great quote by Pedro Grifol that we'll get to a little bit later in this episode. Speaking of urgency, the Sox just got enough on Monday afternoon, and with a depleted Minnesota lineup, and Dylan Cease, our ace on the hill, it kind of felt like a must-win because I'm not too confident with Lance Lynn and Giolito going in games 2 and 3. Needed to kick things off the right way, and it was a bit of a nail-biter. But that bullpen, we're going to talk about it later in this episode. Wow, that bullpen stepped up to the challenge on the road in a big way. Sox offense had this lineup on Monday. TA, which we'll talk about his injury, Robert Benintendi, Vaughn, Sheets, Grandal, Alberto playing third base, Colas and Andrus. No Yoan Moncada. We'll address that injury a little bit. He had a rough go of things in Pittsburgh. He fouled off a ball on his foot during that homestand against the Giants, and he just hasn't looked right since. They were talking about it in the pregame on NBC Sports Chicago. So a day off and maybe a little bit more. Coming into Monday, Minnesota Twins starter Kenta Maeda had a record of 2-1 with an ERA of 5.47 and 24 strikeouts in 5 appearances versus our Chicago White Sox in his career. Had not pitched against the Sox since 2021, throwing lots of sliders, lots of stuff, ducking out of the zone. White Sox, a bit of a speedster team coming into the game on Monday, 13 for 13 in stolen bases, but the running game was not really a force on Monday. First inning, Maeda, a healthy dose of sliders, off-speed stuff. Sox went down in order, no surprise, really. How will the White Sox make in-game or in at bat adjustments? That's what I was thinking early on, especially with Luis Robert Jr. Boy, he cannot lay off those sliders. He had a rough one on Monday. Righties really need to be patient with this type of pitcher. Take whatever you can get. It's going to be difficult to try to turn around and pull something that's slipping out of the zone. And he had some nasty stuff early on. Second inning, leadoff double by Andrew Vaughn. Sox absolutely love hitting doubles right now. Sheets unable to advance. Vaughn, Yaz struck out. And Alberto saw only one pitch and flew out, wasted an opportunity early to get Cease some run support because Cease did look sharp early on for sure. Third inning, Oscar Colas with a leadoff hit. Back-to-back innings now. The White Sox had a leadoff man on. Tim Anderson with a bullet to third base and another force out at second. Some leather being flashed by the Twins. And Roberts, second time seeing Maeda, produced a fly out to center field. So Sox with 2 hits, 3 strikeouts, and a walk after 3 innings. If you watched Sunday's game in Pittsburgh, you started to get that sinking feeling of they couldn't do anything on Sunday. Here we go with a guy that throws a lot of junk. Fourth inning, though, things changed, thankfully. Minnesota scored a run in the bottom of the third. So it'd been nice if the Sox to get right back up there and attack one on themselves. So Benintendi led off with a single. So 3 innings in a row that the Sox had a leadoff hitter on. Andrew Vaughn with a deep fly to center field. Sheets with a single to right field. So second and first with only 1 out. Yasmani Grandal continues to hit the baseball. Third single of the inning to get the White Sox on the board. Got that one back. Then Hanser Alberto helped out his own cause. More on that in a little bit. And hit a 3-run home run to left field. His first of the year, making it 4-1 Sox. It was really great to see the Sox adjust to what Maeda was doing and not try to do too much. Peppered him with some singles, and then Alberto found something he could drive and redeemed himself from what he did on the defense side. So 5 hits, 4 runs in that inning. Maeda at 61 pitches after 4. And that was really it for the White Sox, that big fourth inning. 5th through the 9th, you had a Grandal double, and that was about it. That one big inning. Sox are going to have games like this. Thankfully, Cease was able to bend, not break, and the bullpen was just absolutely outstanding. Sox offense, 4 runs, 8 hits. Within those 8 hits, 3 of them were for extra bases. Sox were 2 for 7 with runners in scoring position. Grandal 2 for 4 with an RBI, and Alberto, that big 3-run home run, his first of the year. Dylan Cease, man, he had to throw far more pitches than needed because of some rough defense behind him. Sox bullpen turned in another solid performance to help get the win. More on that in a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by So Rare. Hey, our new sponsor, So Rare, is a revolutionary fantasy baseball game and marketplace transforming fans into owners with officially licensed digital cards featuring players from across all 30 MLB teams. Unlike other fantasy baseball platforms, So Rare managers truly own their fantasy experience, collecting, buying, selling, and competing with player cards against global opponents to win epic rewards. Win or lose, you still own your cards, and there's no cost to play. Plus, the more you win, the more you advance, collecting increasingly powerful cards and accessing next-level competitions and rewards. Head to sorare.com/lockedon. That's spelled SORARE.com to draft your team of free player cards, set your lineup, and start competing today to win epic rewards. Again, that's sorare.com/lockedon to start playing today. Dylan Cease got his 3rd start of the year. His previous start against the San Francisco Giants. He definitely had a battle in that start. We found out he had a bit of a head cold. Was able to manage. It was the only game the Sox won of that series. Minnesota did not have Buxton in their opening lineup. Gallo, Kepler, Correa. So you got to take advantage. We're looking at this depleted Minnesota lineup, and we've got our ace on the hill. We've got to scratch a win off today. Dylan Cease looked sharp early on, struck out the side. Speeds and eye level being mixed up nicely. Knuckle curve, fastball, slider, all working early on. 14 pitches. And now I'm wondering, can Minnesota make adjustments? Cease has done really well against the Twins lately. Second inning, Twins, they made an announcement. I think it was Benetti or maybe it was Steve Stone. The Twins had only stolen one base all year. So I feel like we're seeing an uptick in teams aggressively running, and the rate of stealing bases, the percentage I believe is up there. It's high, but the Twins not a running team. So Dylan Cease might not have to worry about that. Sitting around 95 miles per hour in the second. Elvis Andrus was throwing some leather in that particular inning. Really difficult backhanded pick. Things would be different later in the game for him. To get an inning force out at second base, only 19 pitches after two. 19 pitches in the inning, 33 total for Dylan Cease after two. In the third, after a ground ball that Tim Anderson could not get to, a really nice job by Dylan Cease fielding his own position. He was able to field a bunt, quickly throw a dart to second base to get the lead runner. There was a base hit, then a hit batter. So bases loaded, 2 outs. Cease is hitting 97 miles per hour at this point. He got ahead in the count, 0-2. A ground ball hit right to Alberto at third, and it completely ate him up. A run scored, 1-0 Twins. Cease forced to throw more pitches. Bases still loaded. Cease just did it himself and got a strikeout to prevent any more damage. After 3 innings, 2 hits, 1 run, 0 earned run, 4 strikeouts and a walk for Dylan Cease. In the fourth, the White Sox just put up that big 4 spot in the bottom half of the third. It would be nice to see a quick inning from Dylan Cease. Not necessarily the case. Another hit batter, a walk to Vasquez, so second and first with 1 out. Just a horribly executed rundown that started with Alberto double clutching, throwing to second for a force. It really should have just been a bang-bang double play. In this rundown, Minnesota, one of the Minnesota runners completely levels TA. He goes down grabbing his knee. So you've got second. He stayed in the game at that point. Third and second, 2 outs. And on cue, you just knew it was going to happen. Minnesota makes the Sox pay. Larnach drives in a run. It was 4-2 White Sox. Mental mistake there on Hanser Alberto. I don't know what he was necessarily thinking and why that rundown needed to happen. By the way, it was a horrible rundown. That shouldn't even have been a case. That should have been a double play. But damage was somewhat limited. More on that a little bit later. Fifth inning, Cease with 69 pitches on his arm entering the inning. Dylan Cease, he did not have his best stuff during the inning, but he was able to battle, starting to break down a little bit. He was still catching hitters off guard with his off-speed stuff, which still worked. And that's the thing. When Cease might not have his sharpest stuff, or he's not able to pinpoint it like he would like to. Fastball's flying out of the zone a little bit. Slider is not hitting the corner. He's got enough movement, and he continuing to change eye levels to keep hitters off balance. He was doing that. However, he had to keep pitching around errors. He had to pitch around an Elvis Andrus error at second, and a ball that went completely right past Gavin Sheets. Colas came in from right field. The throw was coming in from the outfield, and it was cut off for some reason. If he would have let that go, they might have got the runner at home. It was 4-3 Twins at this point. 3 infield errors behind Dylan Cease. Scott Merkin tweeted something out that he guessed maybe 15 extra pitches needed to happen due to the problematic defense. Bottom of the sixth, this is when it started to get really interesting with our bullpen. Jimmy Lambert came in. He was mixing things up nicely. High fastball, 95 miles per hour to get a strikeout. And then the second out, knuckle curve at 77 miles per hour. Lambert continued to impress, held things at a 4-3 Sox lead. Bottom of the seventh, it was Graveman. Nice communication out in the outfield with Luis Robert. I believe it was Romy Gonzalez running out there for a short fly ball. And we've seen collisions happen by this White Sox team, especially last year. And Romy Gonzalez peeled off. That's Robert's ball 100% of the time as he is coming in from center field. He was also shaded very well. Good research done of how they were going to be pitching to Minnesota. There was a ball that looked like it could have been in the gap, and Robert was placed perfectly for that. Graveman had a lot of movement on his slider, hitting corners and dipping out of the zone. That was good to see. Eighth inning, it was Aaron Bummer. Buxton now came in to pinch hit. He wasn't in the starting lineup. Struck him out on a nasty slider. I'm just thinking no walks. Don't let anybody on. Hit batter, though, unfortunately. It was the third for the Sox in the game. And then some outstanding range by Romy Gonzalez, who came into play second base. Excellent stretch by Berger, who is now at first base. You got 2 outs. Lopez came in with a runner on third, and this was the sequence. He went a ball high at 100 miles per hour, a ball low, a slider low at 88. So he is behind in the count. And then you've got a fastball fouled off at 100 miles per hour, fastball fouled off 99. So now the count is even 2-2, and then a 90 mile per hour slider to get the strikeout. It was a gutsy sequence. That is different. This stuff that we're seeing from Lopez is different this year. And these are confidence boosts, especially in that situation, that jam. Well, the ninth inning was all his too. So Lopez going for that 4-out save, strikeout on an 86 mile per hour slider. You got the shadows now covering the home plate area. 89 mile per hour slider. Fastball is still at 100. Nasty stuff flying out of the zone. Hitters just cannot check up. Such a difference from a few years ago where his stuff was just straight. He had velocity on his stuff, but there was no movement, and he caught so much of the zone. Not the case right now. Pitch clock issues for Lopez a little bit. Good on Yaz for calling a timeout. Got a ground out to third base. You got 2 outs, nobody on, still that 1-run lead, and then painting the corner with a 100 mile per hour fastball. And then some high gas at 100. Absolutely mercy. White Sox get the win. Final line for Dylan Cease. 5 innings, 3 hits, 3 runs. Again, only 1 earned run, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts. He threw 98 pitches. His ERA sits at 1.65. And another solid showing for the bullpen. 4 innings, 1 hit, 0 runs, 0 walks, and 7 strikeouts. You know, a lot has been made lately about, hey, it's early. It's only 10, 11 games in, you know, like this is early. There was an article written by Daryl Van Scoven in the Chicago Sun-Times, and just an outstanding quote. This was a post-game quote from Monday's game, and this is what Grifol had to say. I don't like that term early. It's not early. It's a Major League Baseball game that we've got to win, whether it's April 1st or freaking September something. I love that. I'm going to print that out and hang that somewhere. That is what I've been waiting for. And I love that he said that, addressed that. Hey, these count just as much as they do in late September. Get them now while we can. Minnesota had a depleted lineup. Take advantage of that. We got our ace on the hill. Love that quote from Grifol. Grifol's view of his team after 11 games: we're talented, we're hungry, we've just got to put it all together. The effort has been great. That's really the biggest thing. That's the only thing I'm concerned with, and I haven't seen any issues there. If we keep showing up like we are, good things are going to happen. As Grifol said, this Win wasn't textbook on Monday, and there are injuries to deal with now. But there were gutty performances, Grifol said. Cease battled through adversity, which a few errors led him to find himself in a little trouble. He made great pitches when he needed to make them after the errors. More injuries to make note of and a pair of new arms in the bullpen to get to know. More on that in a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Grand slams, no hitters, and double plays are back, and there's no better place to get in on the MLB action than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. That's because right now new customers can step up to the plate with a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon, sign up, place your first bet, and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win. So don't miss your chance to get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. Some news, notes, and injuries, unfortunately. Tim Anderson left Monday's game with knee soreness after that bizarre rundown collision. Grifol on Anderson. He felt a little bit of pain when it happened. He felt like he could play through it, and it stiffened up on him a little bit. He's getting further evaluated tonight, but we'll see how that plays out. I'm optimistic. And then Moncada did not play on Monday, and this is what Pedro Grifol had to say on Moncada. A little back soreness, kind of the same thing that got him in the spring a little bit. He's day to day, 10 or 11 games in. We have to nip that in the bud quick rather than trying to grind through pain. That's not the right thing to do. And then prior to the game on Monday, this is a bizarre situation and an unfortunate one for sure. White Sox placed right-hand pitcher Joe Kelly on the 15-day injured list, retroactive to April 9th, with a right groin strain. And apparently, Joe Kelly tweaked his groin while running onto the field on Sunday's bench clearing situation in Pittsburgh. That is what I've been hearing. Okay, White Sox selected the contract of right-hand pitcher Kenyon Middleton from Class AAA Charlotte and outrighted right-hand pitcher Jonathan Stever to Charlotte. So the White Sox acquired Middleton in January. He's 29 years old, was drafted by the Angels, and spent the first few seasons of his career there. He seemed to be establishing himself as a quality relief option in 2017 and 2018, making 80 appearances over those two seasons with a 3.43 ERA. Unfortunately, he required Tommy John surgery midway through the latter campaign, putting him out of action for over a year. He pitched well enough in the minors in 2022 to get back into the big leagues, but his 18 appearances for the Arizona Diamondbacks resulted in a 5.29 ERA. Middleton in spring training this past year for the White Sox, 8 games, 9 innings, gave up 10 hits in those 9 innings and 7 runs. I forgot to mention this. So there was so much going on in the previous episode with the weekend series in Pittsburgh, but at the beginning of that Pittsburgh series in Friday, and I'm sure you heard all about this, White Sox designated right-hand reliever Jose Ruiz and Schultens was a guy that they brought up. They purchased the contract of right-hand pitcher Jesse Schultens from AAA Charlotte. Schulten saw some action immediately during the Pittsburgh series and pitched pretty well. The White Sox also signed former closer Alex Colomé to a minor league contract. Colomé, who was in the Nationals camp this spring after signing a minor league deal, will be activated at Charlotte this past weekend. That happened. Colomé, 34 years old, made 4 scoreless appearances in his last 4 outings with the Nationals in spring training, but was reassigned to minor league camp and released last week. Now, Jose Ruiz, that was a quick hook for him, allowed 3 home runs over his last 2 appearances and allowed 9 runs on 8 hits and 4 walks while striking out 3 over 4 relief appearances so far this season. he owned a 4.56 ERA over 68 games with the White Sox. So then on Sunday, the Arizona Diamondbacks announced that right-hander Jose Ruiz had been acquired from the White Sox in exchange for cash considerations. Thank you, MLB trade rumors. Tuesday, White Sox go for their first back-to-back win series, and that would be the series win as well. So we could do it all in one game. First time they win back-to-back games, and we could win a series if Lance Lynn shows up. He is off against Pablo Lopez for the Minnesota Twins. Lopez this year 1-0 with a .73 ERA. 12 and a third innings this year, 16 strikeouts. He, of course, came over to the Twins for Luis Arraez from the Miami Marlins. So Lopez has really not much experience at all against our Chicago White Sox, which could be good or bad. How many years have we seen White Sox struggle against pitchers they have never seen or heard of before? Lance Lynn looks to bounce back from an ugly outing against the San Francisco Giants last week, where he went 4 and a third innings, 9 hits, 8 earned runs, 3 home runs, 3 walks, and 5 strikeouts. Lance Lynn is 2-2 with an ERA of 4.50 and 37 strikeouts and 8 appearances against the Minnesota Twins in his career. Lynn faced the Twins 3 times last season, 0-2, 15 total innings pitched, 24 hits in those 15 innings, 15 earned runs, 5 home runs in those 3 starts. Hopefully it is indeed a bounce back performance for Lance Lynn, and the White Sox can make it 2 in a row against the first place Minnesota Twins. Folks, thank you so very much for making this podcast part of your daily routine. You can find the Locked On White Sox podcast absolutely everywhere you find your podcasts. We are on Twitter at Locked On Sox. You can find me on Twitter at Nick_GGTB. Hey, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Past that, along to other White Sox fans in your life. I do appreciate that. Thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen. For your second listen, check out Locked On Fantasy Baseball. Win your league by listening to Matt and Dom every day as they bring you the very best fantasy draft strategies. Find Locked On Fantasy Baseball wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hey, on the next episode, I'll recap Lance Lynn's outing as the White Sox look to make it 2 in a row. Really appreciate you making time for the Locked On White Sox podcast. I'm Nick Morawski. Until next time, go Sox.